I swear, if we finish one more episode at that pool, I don't think I can take another casualty there. But did you spot it? The tears. I think that's going to be something that's crucial to the next episode of the show, and we'll get into it later on in the video. With this episode taking us to Trantor, Ignus, the home swarm, quite literally everywhere, and also providing some real exciting moments that I didn't expect to see before getting into the episode. There's a lot to unpack, and the first act of war looks as though it's going to be getting carried out very soon. So with that, let's recap, break down, and explain all that there was to take away from this episode. So let's get into it. Here is Foundation Season 2 Episode 7, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. Ignus. Planet Ignus was where we spent a lot of the time throughout this episode, with Tellem, Salvor, Gaal, and the other mentalics. Following the death of Hari Seldon in the previous episode, neither Gaal or Salvor knew about it when the episode began. But there was a moment at the start which Salvor drew attention to, and ultimately meant that she had a hunch that she went off right at the end of the episode. This was also supported by the fact that she couldn't predict the coin toss, something which she's usually able to predict 100% of the time, showing that something was going on. Later on in the episode, right at the end, we saw that she went over to the boat that she was suspicious about earlier on, and saw that the history of the routes were erased, but it wasn't wiped off of the core data supply, and she was able to retrieve it. It was during this investigative work that Gaal approached her and told her, "You don't need to trust them, but you do need to trust me. Now is not the time to pull tricks, do you understand?" This left Salvor with a puzzled look on her face, and I think the tears that we saw right at the end on the mentalic could be key to that. Later on, in the middle of the night, Salvor went against what Gaal said, and she followed the ship's route and ultimately ended up at the pool where Seldon was killed in the last episode by Tellem. It was in this moment where she saw him and jumped in after him, and Tellem along with two henchmen appeared behind her. One of them had two tears going down their face, and I think this is actually Gaal. We know that Gaal is extremely strong, especially with mentalic abilities, far stronger than what Salvor is, and I believe she's using the mentalic ability to appear as somebody else in others' minds. Just like how the other mentalics did when they appeared as Hari when they flew the beggar off of Ignus to make out like he had left. There's no reason for this individual to have tears going down their face. And I think the tears are there because Gaal would react in this way if she found out that Seldon was dead and killed in that brutal fashion, so that's something to definitely look out for in the next episode. Tellem's true colors are really starting to show, and we're getting to see the totalitarian dictatorship that she's ruling and not allowing people to own their own minds, and only teaching them one key belief: hatred to others that are unlike them. Tellem wants Ignus to be a sanctuary, but in actual fact she wants it to be isolated, where only people of their kind can be. So with Gaal now most likely being aware of that, I think she's going to stand up to Tellem with the intention of becoming the new leader of the mentalics. At least, I hope she does. It's up for interpretation if Salvor was killed, but personally, I don't think she was. I just think she was put into some kind of sleep. We also heard some more about the mule in this episode. Gaal informed the other mentalics of Hari Seldon's psychohistory and how amazing it was, but also about how the mule would be a threat to the mentalics and the Foundation in 152 years, something which looked like it piqued the interest of the mentalics in the present day. Our time on Ignus in this episode was very valuable, and I really enjoyed this arm of the story, even the section about all of the emotions and senses that the mentalics were able to feel and understand from creatures and other species around them. It showed just how strong they were, and that they were probably the right individuals to be a part of the second Foundation, Empire and Sareth. It's almost like what didn't happen with Empire in this episode. Sareth had a key focus, and this was most definitely her strongest performance to date in the entire season. I loved the rivalry that was present between herself and Demerzel in this episode. She found out that Demerzel was ordered by Brother Day to kill Sareth's family, and it now very much feels like Sareth will not hold back in the way that she moves forward, especially around Demerzel. I'm not a big fan of Demerzel, so I'd like to see her meet an equal match. There's been a connection between Brother Dawn and Sareth for the entirety of this season, and personally, I do question its sincerity. She went off in secret with Dawn and told him that if she was going to need to carry a child, she wanted it to be his. She mentioned how she didn't mind being married to Day, albeit if it would essentially be like being a prisoner, but she wanted Dawn's child. I think this is part of a larger plan that she's cooking. Even though Day has committed to getting rid of the Cleonic genetic dynasty, I think she plans on infiltrating from within and making it clear that not even Day's own brother is loyal to him, which is something that will make Day become even more paranoid. We still don't know who is behind the Blind Angel's attempt on Day, and it's clear to see that it weighs heavily on his mind. So by chipping away and making him question who is loyal to him, it's a way of getting inside of his head even more. And who knows, a public appearance could make Day look weak. Outside of the Sareth scheming, we had a section which picked up with Constance and Polly. Constance spoke something extremely strange when the episode opened, but I didn't think much of it at the time. But it turned out that Seldon had essentially put a layer of himself within her when they met. This was so that he'd be able to give Brother Day a message by projecting his face over hers, something which I thought was such a cool moment. When he insulted Day and mentioned how nothing had changed, it was a moment that did make me laugh. Within this too, we also saw that Seldon essentially said that he wasn't afraid of war if Empire weren't going to recognize them as their own entity, and that on Terminus they had far greater technology than what there was on Trantor. So with that threat, Day essentially rounded up some ships to head to Terminus to try and take what he believed was rightfully his. So the first part of war, the diplomatic negotiations had failed, which means that it's definitely going to get messy from there. I can't help but feel that Seldon essentially sacrificed Constance and Polly for a message, but I hope that they managed to find a way to get out safely. Hober Mallow. Within this episode, we saw how and why Hober Mallow ended up being taken in by the home swarm. It turned out that the coordinates that Seldon gave him were based off of psychohistory, and he anticipated that the home swarm spacers would arrive at the same time that Hober Mallow did. It turned out that Seldon wanted Hober Mallow to bribe them in order to get them on the side of Terminus when the impending war, which we saw is soon set to arrive on Terminus, would be happening. This bribe was done by giving Sheer Center Obelisk. This is a mineral that they need to survive, and Empire essentially gives this to them for allowing them to take 10% of their offspring to use as navigators, which serve the Empire. However, under fear of Empire eventually taking more than the current percentage, she reported Mallow and declined his offer. This is where Bell and Kerr entered the picture and tried to arrest Mallow, but they failed due to Mallow outsmarting them by releasing the Bishop's Claw that was on board as a way of attacking. That was definitely a standout moment for me in this episode, especially considering that it allowed Mallow to get away. Kerr doesn't want to serve Empire, and it's clear to see that he can see the direction that it's heading in, believing that the Foundation is the side to be on board with, but Bell's fear of what Brother Day would do to his husband and himself is what imprints enough fear within him to stay loyal. But I do wonder if that loyalty will be tested in the near future. Overall review. I thought this was a really good episode of the show. I much preferred it to last week. Last week had a great ending, but this one had a really good rhythm to it that allowed it to flow and for each arm of the story to get a dedicated amount of time. There wasn't a single arc that was left out of this episode, so I'm glad that they all got the attention that they deserved. The moment where Hober Mallow released a Bishop's Claw off the ship and allowed it to attack Bell and Kerr was a moment that I loved, and also the part where Seldon appeared on Constance's face and mentioned how nothing had changed with Empire. They were two parts that stood out for me and I thought provided a good laugh. We're slowly building towards the season finale, and with 3 episodes left, I am really intrigued to see where the show is going to go from here. I feel there has to be more seasons to come as well, because it feels like we're only just touching the surface with the story. I'm interested to see how the Empire is going to handle taking on Terminus and the Foundation that has technology that far advances theirs. I'm hoping it's going to make for a good battle, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. So, there you have it. Foundation Season 2 Episode 7 Ending Explained. What did you think of this episode? Leave a comment down below, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.